अहिंसा सत्यमस्तेयं शौचम इंद्रिय निग्रह एतम सामासिकम धर्मम चतुर्वर्णेय ब्रविन्मनुः. Non-violence, truthfulness, non-stealing, purity, and control of the senses. These 5 principles together constitute the essence of dharma for all. This shlok, drawn from the Shanti Parv of the Mahabharata, offers a distilled expression of Indian values and ethical thought, clear, universal, and deeply practical. It does not prescribe rules for specific roles, but lays down foundational values that uphold individual conduct, institutional integrity, and social harmony. For those in public service, these principles remind us that ethical and values-embedded governance begins with the self and extends to the choices we make on behalf of others.
Namaskar, and a very warm welcome to each one of you. At every age and civilization, governance has been as much as a moral undertaking as it is an administrative one. It is not only about efficiency and order, it is also about integrity, discernment, and the ability to act in service of a greater good. As government employees, many of you are already well versed in the principles of public service ethics, such as fairness, impartiality, transparency, and accountability, largely introduced through modern administrative training and often rooted in Western frameworks. These are important, but they are not the only frameworks we have. Long before modern ethical theories were formalized in the West, Indian civilization had developed rich, nuanced, and deeply rooted value systems through its philosophy, jurisprudence, literature, and everyday ways of living. These are not abstract ideals. They were lived principles shaping governance, justice, duty, and the moral fiber of society. This course is an invitation to reconnect with that legacy, not to replace what you know, but to broaden and deepen your understanding of values and ethics by drawing from India's own knowledge traditions. This is not a course in idealism. It is a course in rootedness. It seeks to reintroduce you to the ethical imagination of India, not as nostalgia, but as a living resource in today's challenges in public life. Let us begin this journey of rediscovery of values that are not just constitutional, but also civilizational.
By the end of this course, you will be able to explain the concepts of values and ethics and describe how they are presently institutionalized in Indian civil service frameworks. Identify and interpret key human values drawn from the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Ramayana, relating each to contemporary duties of statecraft and public service. Apply scriptural values in tandem with existing frameworks to design or refine day-to-day policies, processes, and personal work habits, thereby strengthening citizen-centric and value-driven governance. This course is organized into 3 interconnected modules, each designed to build upon the previous one. The first module introduces the basic concepts of values and ethics in the context of governance, drawing attention to their role in individual and institutional conduct. The second module explores core Indian values as understood through Indian knowledge systems, highlighting their cultural depth and relevance. The final module focuses on applying these values to contemporary governance, encouraging learners to reflect on their own practice and integrate Indian values into their professional roles. Module 1: Understanding Values and Ethics in Governance.
We begin our journey with a foundational question. What are values and ethics, and why do they matter in governance? As government employees, many of you already engage with codes of conduct and rules of procedure in your day-to-day work. You are also no stranger to the language of integrity, impartiality, and public accountability. But even with these structures in place, we often face ethical gray zones, situations where no rule book seems to offer a clear path. This is where our understanding of values and ethics becomes essential, not as concepts, but as tools for discernment and decision making. Let us now start with the basics.
Values refer to our deepest convictions, beliefs that guide our understanding of right and wrong, desirable and undesirable. They are developed over time, influenced by our families, culture, society, and education. Values are inward and personal, yet they also connect us to others. They shape our aspirations, our priorities, and our vision of a good life, not only for ourselves but for the communities we serve. From the moment we begin to participate in the world, we start absorbing values, sometimes without even realizing it. These could be values like truthfulness, compassion, fairness, loyalty, discipline, or justice. Once internalized, values become reference points. They don't dictate our actions mechanically, but they help us navigate dilemmas with greater clarity. Ethics, on the other hand, are the systems or frameworks through which we evaluate and justify our actions. Ethics asks, what should I do in this situation and why? It is concerned with behavior, specifically behavior that has consequences for others. While values are more intuitive, ethics demands reasoning, reflection, and judgment. Ethics often begins where law and policy end. Rules can only take us so far. Many times, what's legal may still not feel just. That is where ethical reasoning comes in, challenging us to look beyond compliance and toward conscience. To illustrate, imagine a government officer who finds a loophole in a regulation that allows a technically correct but morally questionable favor to a private contractor. The rules may not prohibit it, but values like integrity and fairness will likely prompt the officer to act differently. Ethics becomes the bridge between personal conscience and institutional accountability. Ethical practice involves a constant negotiation between the personal and the collective, the written and the unwritten, the rule-bound and the right. It is not always easy, but it is essential to meaningful governance. So, in simple terms, values are about what we believe, and ethics is about how we act, especially when those beliefs are tested. This is why values and ethics matter not only in our private lives, but even more so in public service, where decisions can impact the lives, dignity, and futures of others. In this part of Module 1, we will move from the philosophical to the administrative. What are the core values expected of government employees in India? How do we translate ethical awareness into institutional conduct? And do we have frameworks that have helped shape this conversation? Let us now turn to how the Government of India articulates and institutionalizes values and ethics within its civil services. Over the years, several key frameworks have been developed to formalize and reinforce ethical conduct, both at the level of individual officers and public institutions. The Second Administrative Reforms Commission, or the ARC of India, has played a seminal role in defining and articulating the ethical landscape for public officials. Its fourth report on ethics and governance, published January 2007, underscores that in a democracy, the ultimate accountability of every public official is to the people, not merely through electoral mandates or legal procedures, but through ethical conduct rooted in integrity and responsibility. The ARC makes a crucial point. While the law governs what is legal, it cannot always dictate what is moral. There exists a wide grey area where actions may not be illegal but still violate the spirit of fairness, trust, or public interest. The report famously quotes Senator Fulbright's observation: "We are in a tragic plight if the accepted standard by which we measure the integrity of a man in public life is simply that he keeps within the letter of the law." This insight draws attention to a vital truth. Morality cannot be reduced to legality. Ethical lapses may not always involve corruption in the legal sense, but they can erode public trust just as deeply. To help bridge this gap, the ARC draws on the Nolan Committee's 7 principles of public life, first articulated in the United Kingdom but applicable across democratic contexts. These principles form the moral core of what is expected from holders of public office. The first one is selflessness. All decisions must be taken purely in terms of public interest, not personal gain. Second, integrity. Holders of public office must avoid obligations that could influence their conduct. Third, objectivity. Decisions should be made on merit, particularly in public appointments or contracts. Fourth, accountability. Public officials must be answerable for their decisions and subject to appropriate scrutiny. Fifth, openness. A commitment to transparency with justification provided for actions unless the wider public interest demands confidentiality. Sixth, honesty. Private interests must be declared and conflicts of interest managed proactively. And the last, leadership. Public officials must model ethical behavior and promote these values in others. The ARC proposes a dual code approach, a code of conduct which sets clear rules and prohibitions, and a code of ethics which lays down the broader values and ideals. While the code of conduct tells officers what not to do, The code of ethics asks them to reflect on what is right to do, even when no rulebook is available. In our discussion so far, we have seen how values and ethics are foundational to public service, shaping both individual behavior and institutional culture. But how do we ensure these values are not just philosophical ideals? How do we integrate them into our systems for recruitment, training, and performance? This is where the Civil Services Competency Dictionary, developed by the Department of Personnel and Training, the DOPT, in collaboration with United Nations Development Programme, the UNDP, becomes particularly important. It offers a structured and practical way of translating values and ethics into observable, measurable behaviors, or what we call competencies. The Competency Dictionary introduces a helpful visual metaphor to institutionalize values and ethics. That is, the iceberg model. Above the waterline lie the visible, surface level aspects of a person, their knowledge and skills. These are important. They represent what we can teach in a classroom or assess in a training module. For instance, learning how to write a report or use a digital platform. These are essential threshold requirements for any role in the civil service. However, as the model shows, beneath the surface of the iceberg lies hidden the real drivers of excellence. These are the deeper, often less visible factors such as a person's attitudes and values. For example, whether they believe that public service means putting the citizen first. Second, their traits. For instance, consistent attention to detail, emotional regulation, or self-discipline. And third, their motives. What truly drives them? Is it achievement, contribution, responsibility, or status? These elements influence how a person behaves in ambiguous, high pressure, or ethically sensitive situations, where simply having the right technical knowledge is not enough. For instance, when rules are unclear or conflicting, or when discretion must be exercised, it is a person's internal value system, traits, and motives that determine whether they act in fairness, compassion, and accountability. This is where the link to ethics and values becomes very clear. The characteristics below the waterline are not just personal tendencies. They are reflections of a person's moral framework. A government employee's self-image, their sense of professional duty, and their motivation to serve all flow from the values they hold and the ethical compass they follow. The Competency Dictionary makes this actionable by clustering civil service competencies into 4 pillars: ethos, ethics, equity, and efficiency. Under the ethics pillar, for example, we find core competencies like integrity, transparency, openness, and fairness. What this framework does is move the conversation from intention to action, from vague notions of good conduct to specific behaviors that can be nurtured, demonstrated, and evaluated. In this way, the Competency Dictionary does something powerful. It transforms values and ethics from being abstract ideals into practical expectations, clearly aligned with professional excellence. and it reinforces the idea that truly ethical public service is not just about avoiding wrongdoing, it is about consciously doing what is right, even when it is difficult. The Karma Yogi competency model was developed by the Capacity Building Commission or CBC under the Government of India as part of the Mission Karma Yogi initiative. This model for civil services capacity building is anchored in the DOPT guidelines and envisions transforming Indian government officers into Karma Yogis, that is, purpose driven, citizen centric, and future ready public officials. What sets the Karma Yogi model apart from the earlier models, like the Second Administrative Reforms Commission's values based vision or the Competency Dictionary's behavioral clusters, is that it integrates all these elements while rooting them in a broader Indian civilizational ethos. While the ARC emphasized ethical norms and institutional integrity, and the Competency Dictionary focused on observable behaviors like integrity, accountability, and attention to detail, the Karma Yogi model goes a step further. It connects competencies with inner growth, self mastery, and public purpose, blending traditional Indian thought with modern learning design. At its core, the Karma Yogi competency model identifies 6 domains of learning. The first, self, cultivating self awareness and personal discipline. Second, thought, building conceptual clarity and decision making capacity. Third, people, enhancing communication, empathy, and team leadership. Fourth, work, improving task ownership, innovation, and efficiency. Fifth, institution, aligning with organizational goals and service standards. And sixth, the nation, anchoring actions in constitutional values and national development. In doing so, the model does not treat ethical conduct as an isolated quality. Instead, it embeds ethics within each stage of growth, from the individual level to the institutional and national levels, ensuring that value based action becomes a lived practice, not just a training objective. This integrated approach makes the Karma Yogi competency model a unique and forward looking model for building ethical, capable, and compassionate government employees.
With this, we come to an end of Module 1. In this module, you have learned the distinction between values and ethics and their significance in governance, how ethical conduct operates at both the personal and institutional levels, the key ethical expectations articulated in the Second Administrative Reforms Commission's report, including the importance of selflessness, integrity, and public interest. How the Civil Services Competency Dictionary translates values into observable, trainable behaviors. The unique contribution of the Karma Yogi competency model, which blends ethical governance with inner transformation and civilizational purpose. These frameworks together show how India's administrative system is actively working to embed ethics and values in public service. In the next module, we will take a deeper look into India's own intellectual and cultural heritage. You will begin to see how Indian knowledge systems offer a vast treasure of values that have time and again guided ancient Indian rulers, philosophers, and communities, long before these contemporary frameworks were formalized. In this module, we begin our journey into India's ancient wisdom traditions, texts that have, for centuries, guided individuals and societies in questions of duty, justice, compassion, and self mastery. These are not just philosophical texts, they are living archives of ethical reflection deeply woven into the fabric of Indian public life. We will be exploring selected human values drawn from three foundational sources: the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Ramayana. Each of these works is vast in scope and layered in meaning. Together, they offer a vision of life where governance is not merely administration, but a moral responsibility. It is important to note that we will only be engaging with a small set of values from each of these rich traditions. These are glimpses, windows into the civilizational treasure trove that includes many more texts: the Upanishads, the Tirukural, the Dharma Shastras, Arthashastra, Jataka tales, Bhakti literature, the Buddhist literature, Jain agamas, and much more. What we offer here is not a comprehensive study, but a few human values relevant for today's government officers who must navigate policy, power, and public service with integrity and compassion. Let us begin.
The word Ved comes from the root Vid, meaning to know. The Vedas are seen as the ultimate source of timeless knowledge, meant not only to uplift the soul, but also to guide humanity in ethical, intellectual, and social life. For those in public service, the Vedas offer not just philosophical insights, but a comprehensive ethical worldview, one that speaks directly to questions of duty, self restraint, justice, resource management, and public good. The contents of the four Vedas, that is, the Rig Ved, the Yajur Ved, the Sam Ved, and the Atharva Ved, are immense. But for practical understanding, they can be grouped under three dimensions: Gyan, Karm, and Upasana. Let us now explore what each of these three dimensions mean for public service. Gyan refers to deep experiential knowledge, not merely the accumulation of information, but the understanding that arises from contemplation, reflection, and self awareness. In the context of governance, Gyan is the clarity of thought and discernment that enables a government employee to see the larger picture, understand complexities, and act wisely. It forms the foundation of ethical decision making, where rules alone do not suffice. A government employee, guided by Gyan, develops the foresight to weigh long term consequences and serve the public with moral clarity and intellectual sharpness. Karm. Karm in the Vedic context is not merely action but right action, governed by responsibility and ethical intention. For government employees, karm relates directly to kartavya or duty, executing tasks honestly, efficiently, and without personal bias or expectation of reward. The Vedas emphasize that karma must be aligned with dharma, action rooted in righteousness. In public administration, karma is manifested through transparent processes, unbiased implementation of policy, and accountable service delivery. It represents the hands of governance, putting moral principles into motion. Upasana means to sit near, symbolically referring to being close to truth or the higher self. It involves practices of self discipline, introspection, and alignment of one's inner being with higher ethical ideals. In administrative life, Upasana translates into self regulation, humility, emotional balance, and moral consistency. It is what enables a public servant to maintain inner stability even amidst external pressure and to approach service with sincerity and reflection rather than mechanical compliance.
These three aspects, Gyan, Karm, and Upasana, are not separated from one another. Rather, they are interwoven. The Vedas suggests that knowledge, action, and inner clarity must exist in harmony. For a government employee, this idea holds deep relevance. Ethical governance is not only about knowing the rules or executing decisions. It is about doing so with awareness, purpose, and moral balance.
The Taittiriya Upanishad is a text within the Krishna Yajurved, one of the two main branches of the Yajurved. Specifically, it is part of the Taittiriya Shakha or school of the Krishna Yajurved. This Upanishad is considered one of the principal or Mukhya Upanishads. One of the important teachings of the Taittiriya Upanishad is regarding the duties of a student, or in a broader sense, any seeker of knowledge or public role. It advises one not to neglect truth, virtue, personal and social welfare, prosperity, study, and teaching. It insists that we perform only those acts that are irreproachable, echoing the standard expected of government employees. Among the most profound ethical teachings found in the Taittiriya Upanishad is the passage about the three das, a set of values meant to bring harmony within oneself and with others. These three are: first, dhamma, that is self-restraint; second, dan, that is self-sacrifice or generosity; and the third is daya, that is compassion. These are not personal virtues, they are practical guides for leadership. Let us now understand what each means. Dham, or self-restraint, calls on us to control our impulses, reduce selfish wants, and accept discomfort when necessary for the sake of truth and justice. It relates to austerity, chastity, simplicity, and silence, qualities that strengthen a person's moral resolve. Dan, or generosity, teaches us to give freely and without greed. It is not merely about charity, but about recognizing that wealth and power are not for hoarding, but for redistribution. It reminds us that one does not reach higher purpose through wealth alone. This teaching is beautifully captured by the shlok, Na karmana na prajaya dhanena. Not by wealth, but by renunciation and ethical action shall one achieve immortality. For government employees, Dan emphasizes using one's authority and resources for the greater good, not personal gain. It calls them to act with selflessness, ensuring justice, equity, and service over accumulation or status. Daya or compassion is the value that turns rule following into empathetic governance. It calls for seeing every citizen not as a statistic, but as a person worthy of dignity and understanding. The Upanishads say that the gods are afflicted by desire, humans by greed, and demons by anger. But by practicing self restraint, generosity, and compassion, we free ourselves from these traps and act with our highest potential. What is striking here is that these three ethical instructions, Dam, Daya, and Dan, align directly with what is expected of government employees even today. Self control mirrors integrity and impartiality. Generosity translates into service without bias, and compassion underlies citizen centricity, transparency, and fairness. The word Purusharth refers to the epitome of human existence, or what it means to be a human being in her truest form. A composite Sanskrit term, Purusharth, is made up of the words Purusha and Artha, where Purusha refers to the human being, the soul, and even the universal principle and soul of the cosmos, and Artha, which refers to both wealth or value and purpose or goal. The Purusharth are built on the premise that while life should be enjoyed in all of its forms at appropriate times, some ambitions, such as righteous living and the pursuit of liberation, eventually transcend others and should be one's highest calling. The ability to assess, reason, reflect on the past, anticipate into the years to come, and plan one's course of action distinguishes humans from the other millions of species that live on our planet and seek food, shelter, security, and reproduction. And because of this ability for decision making, mankind has entertained a variety of aims, which are collectively known as the Purusharthas. Let us now explore each of these aims and how we can translate them into actions for public service. Dharma is a central concept in Vedic and Indian philosophy, referring to the moral order that sustains society as well as the ethical duties of individuals based on their role. For government employees, dharma is not merely a personal virtue, it is a professional imperative. It calls for acting impartially, safeguarding public trust, and upholding constitutional values. Dharma also requires contextual judgment, choosing the right course of action when laws are silent or conflicting. It is the anchor that keeps governance rooted in justice and fairness, beyond technical rule following. Artha. Artha refers to the pursuit of material prosperity, economic stability, and resource management. In the realm of governance, it represents the responsible creation, allocation, and stewardship of public funds and infrastructure. A government employee guided by Artha recognizes the importance of efficiency, fiscal responsibility, and development goals, but always in balance with dharma. Kama. Kama encompasses the human longing for joy, beauty, connection, and fulfillment. While often associated with physical or sensual desire, in the Vedic tradition, it includes aesthetic, cultural, and emotional aspirations. For government officials, recognizing karma means understanding that citizens seek not only basic services, but also dignity, identity, and well being. Administrators who ignore this may fulfill tasks but fail to reconnect. In policy design and public service, acknowledging karma brings empathy, emotional intelligence, and a human touch to governance. Moksha. Moksha is the pursuit of liberation, not only in the spiritual sense, but as freedom from ignorance, fear, and suffering. In the context of administration, it can be seen as the aspiration to enable citizens to live with dignity, autonomy, and purpose. Moksha for a government employee could mean a lifelong dedication to systems that liberate people from poverty, discrimination, and exclusion. It is the highest purpose of governance, not merely to manage, but to empower, not merely to regulate, but to elevate. These four aims are seen not as competing goals, but as interconnected pursuits that must be held in balance. Overemphasis on any one, say material success without dharma, leads to imbalance and personal or social breakdown. These are not abstract ideals, they are deeply administrative values dressed in ancient language. They speak to the ethical, emotional, and systemic responsibilities that come with public service.
Let us now delve into some profound but lesser known teachings from the Vedas that hold immense significance for modern administrators. One of the most powerful concepts is of dharma, not as a rigid code, but as a balance between knowledge and action. The Vedas uphold the view that only through the unity of understanding and right conduct can true liberation, which can be personal or collective, be achieved. For government employees, this dynamic view of dharma invites not just rule following, but conscious decision making rooted in wisdom and context. It encourages navigating gray areas with discernment, balancing policy with empathy, and protocol with public need, especially in situations where written rules fall short. The Vedas also offer guidance on the use of resources and material power. In the Yajurved, we find a striking line. Tena tyaktena bhunjata ma gardeha kasya swidhanam, which means enjoy the world through renunciation. Do not covet another's wealth. This teaches us to enjoy what we are given, but with restraint and never at the expense of others. For public officials entrusted with power, budgets, and influence, this becomes a guiding value. Exercise authority with detachment and never allow personal gain to override the public good. The Vedas also offer a vision that holds individual and collective welfare in balance. They do not see society as a tug of war between personal freedom and social duty. Instead, they offer an integrated vision where individuals grow, evolve, and contribute to a community that thrives with them. This harmony between self realization and public service is beautifully expressed in the Yajurved, where progress is seen as both personal and shared. Another powerful teaching is the emphasis on faith and reason working together. The Atharva Ved encourages the development of both intuitive insight and rational clarity, rejecting any divide between belief and critical thinking. This is especially relevant in policy and administration, where empathy and logic must go hand in hand. Equally significant is the Vedic assertion that the highest spiritual understanding lies in seeing the same self in all beings, as expressed in Yastu Sarvani Bhutani Atmanye Vanupasyati Sarva Bhuteshu Katmanam Tato na Vajugupsate. The one who sees all beings in the self and the self in all beings becomes free of hatred and division. In practical terms, this is a call to unbiased, compassionate governance, where no one is excluded or treated as the other. Perhaps one of the most distinctive features of the Vedic worldview is its synthesis of religion and science. The Vedas are not opposed to rational inquiry. In fact, the Atharva Ved in particular contains knowledge related to medicine, agriculture, astronomy, and architecture. The idea that morality and scientific knowledge can and must coexist is especially meaningful for today's governance systems, which must balance tradition and innovation.
Set on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Bhagavad Gita is framed as a dialogue between the statesman warrior Arjuna and his charioteer teacher Sri Krishna. Yet, its real battlefront is the human conscience. In scarcely 700 verses, the text gathers up the loftiest insights of the Vedas and Upanishads and hands them to a leader who must act, decide, and accept the consequences of power. For today's administrators, who confront ethical dilemmas amid competing pressures, the Bhagavad Gita remains a living manual. Modern management schools cite it for motivation. Public policy thinkers prize it for its clear philosophy of work without ego. And seekers read it as a guide to inner composure in the thick of duty. Krishna's first lesson is simple: rise to your task. Right action, that is karma yoga, is not optional. It is the very path to personal balance and social order. At the same time, right action demands the right attitude, an inner steadiness that frees the mind from crippling anxiety over success or failure. It is this union of outer engagement and inner clarity that makes the Bhagavad Gita so relevant to public service. Where the Vedas propose the broad triad of Gyan, Karma, and Upasana, the Bhagavad Gita shows how to braid those three strands in the press of daily decisions. In chapter 13, Arjuna asks, "What is Gyan?" That is, true knowledge. "And what must one know?" Sri Krishna answers, not with abstract theory, but with a roster of 20 mental disciplines. Each is a practical value a leader must internalize before higher knowledge can take root. This is an ethical toolkit perfectly suited to the civil service mindset. Let us now explore some of them. Amanitvam. Amanitvam originates from the Sanskrit word manitvam, which means extending to conceit or haughtiness. It is an exaggerated opinion about oneself. Amanitvam indicates the absence of such self-worshipfulness. Humility is the quiet confidence of a person who knows their worth, yet feels no need to advertise it. Sri Krishna asks us to let go of the subtle hunger for deference that so easily creeps into rank and title. In public life, this translates into keeping the focus on citizens and outcomes rather than on personal stature. The humble officer listens more than they speak, allows expertise to rise from any level, and measures success not by applause but by the quiet improvement of people's lives. Adambhitvam. Adambhitvam is the mental attitude in which dambha is absent. Dambha is an expression quite similar to the manitvam, namely the manifestation of self-glorification. If amanitvam frees us from inner pride, adambhitvam frees us from outer display. It is the grace of doing good work without the flourish of self-promotion. For an administrator, it means resisting the temptation to emblazon every initiative with one's name, sharing credit generously, and letting results speak for themselves. Modesty creates working atmospheres in which colleagues feel valued and the public sees sincerity instead of show. Ahimsa. Ahimsa is far more than refraining from physical harm. It is the commitment to never wound by word, deed, or even intent. In governance, it urges us to draft policies that protect the vulnerable, to speak in ways that dignify the unheard, and to trim away every trace of prejudice in files and forums. An ahimsa-centered officer reviews every directive through a simple lens. Does this diminish anyone's safety, self-respect, or opportunity? The moot point that why should I not hurt other beings is because I do not want to be hurt myself. Common sense ethics dictates that I cannot do unto another what I do not want to be done to me. Shanti. Shanti is the capacity to absorb the shocks of working with people whose views, pace, or temperament differs from our own. It is patience without resentment, flexibility without loss of principle. On the administrative stage, Shanti surfaces as calm negotiation, willingness to revise timelines for a larger good, and the steady refusal to let irritation color official language or hinder service delivery. Arjavam or straightforwardness. When there is Rajubhav, that is, arrow-like straightness between a physical action and the word, or between the word and the thought, the alignment is called Arjavam. Arjavam is the clear alignment of thought, word, and deed. When promises match memos and memos match action, faith in institutions grows. Straightforwardness for an officer means saying exactly what can be done, recording exactly what is decided, and delivering exactly what is recorded. It closes the gaps through which mistrust and corruption typically seep. Shokam, internal and external cleanliness. Shokam is cleanliness in a twofold sense. Bahaya, that is outer cleanliness, and Antara, that is inner cleanliness. It is easy to see the benefit that comes to us from external cleanliness. Clean body, clean clothes, and a clean dwelling place makes the life more pleasant. In addition, the daily discipline of maintaining cleanliness brings about a certain attentiveness and alertness of the mind. Antara Shokam, that is internal cleanliness, which means cleanliness of the Antahakarana, is less easily recognized. What makes the mind a Shokam or unclean? Jealousy, anger, hatred, fear, selfishness, self-condemnation, guilt, pride, possessiveness. All these negative reactions and the climate of despair and resentment which comes in their wake are the unseemliness, the ashokam of the mind. The Bhagavad Gita widens cleanliness beyond tidy offices to include a mind scrubbed of envy, spite, and fear. An official practicing shokam files papers neatly, yes, but also cleans resentment after a tense meeting, clears guilt through timely correction, and keeps priorities unsullied by private bias. Such inner hygiene lends transparency and emotional poise to every administrative act. Atma Vinigraha, or mastery over the mind. Self-mastery is the art of steering attention where duty calls rather than where impulse pulls. It empowers an officer to stay composed during a media storm, to weigh facts before reacting to provocation, and to keep long-term public interest ahead of short-term political pressure. The mind becomes a well-trained civil servant in its own right, not a rebel undermining its master. Anahankara, that is, the absence of self-egotism. Anahankara means the absence of the sense of ahankara, that is, freedom from an individualized identification. Ahankara, the Sanskrit word, indicates the conception of one's own individuality. Ego narrows vision to my project, my turf, my credit. Anahankara widens it to the collective mission. Decisions start being shaped by constitutional values and citizen benefit rather than departmental pride. Collaborative federalism, inter-service cooperation, and the gracious acceptance of oversight all blossom when ego loosens its grip. Nityam, Samachittavam, Ishta, Nishta, Upapattisu, that is, steadfastness of mind. Sama means equal. Chittavat means the state of mind. Ishta, Nishta, Upapattisu indicates the happening of something considered desirable or undesirable. So, here Lord Krishna tells Arjuna to always maintain sameness of mind in the face of the desirable or the undesirable. Neither get elevated over getting what you want, nor feel dejected when you get what you do not want. Accept results as they come factually. Administrative life delivers praise one day and criticism the next. Budgets swell, then shrink. Samachitta is the even-mindedness that treats both outcomes as passing data, not personal verdicts. It guards against complacency in success, despair in setback, and the policy whiplash that follows emotional swings. Citizens experience it as consistency. Vivikta Desa Sevitvam, that is, love for spending time in solitary place. To be contemplative means to be able to face yourself happily. For the one who wants self-knowledge, it is very important to have a value for being with oneself, for quietude. So, I learned to be with myself by willingly taking myself to a quiet place where I take stock of myself and learn to love and accept myself. By inculcating the habit of repairing to a quiet place, you are learning to be with yourself, come to terms with yourself. A mind that enjoys its own company gains the space to review motives and refine judgment. Regular retreats, an early morning walk, an hour of silent reading become laboratories where strategy is purified of ego and aligned with purpose. Officers who cultivate solitude return to the bustle with clearer thought and gentler speech. Taken together, these 11 values form a single arc from inner clarity, that is humility, modesty, and self-control, through ethical interaction, that is non-injury, accommodation, straightforwardness, to a steady, citizen-centered action, that is equanimity, solitude for reflection, and constant self-study.
Composed by sage Valmiki, the Ramayana is not merely a story of gods and kings. It is a deep, reflective narrative on the human condition, on the choices we make, and the values we live by. For government officials and those entrusted with governance, the Ramayana serves as a moral compass, illuminating timeless values such as Satya, Dharma, Karuna, Nishtha, and Seva. Through its characters and their trials, it presents a living framework for ethical action and principled leadership, applicable not only in ancient courts but also in today's corridors of administration.
Dharma, that is righteousness and duty. At the heart of the Ramayana lies the unwavering commitment to dharma, or righteous conduct, even under the most trying circumstances. Lord Ram, despite being wrongfully exiled, chooses duty over comfort, honoring his father's promise and setting the highest example of obedience to law and moral responsibility. This principle is not abstract, it is administrative. Today's government officers, too, are often called upon to uphold constitutional obligations despite personal or political pressures. The Ramayana teaches us that ethical governance requires sacrifice, but it also builds trust and moral authority. Satya, or truthfulness. Raghukul reet sada chali ai, pran jai par vachan na jai. The idea that one may give up one's life but not one's word captures the moral force of truth in the Ramayana. King Dashrath's commitment to his promise and Ram's insistence on honesty, even when silence or evasion could have served him better, serve as reminders that truth is not a strategy but a way of being. For public officials, this means not only telling the truth but building a culture of truthfulness. Clear documentation, accurate reporting, transparency in decision making, and freedom from manipulation. Karuna, or compassion. True strength lies in compassion. Lord Ram shows kindness not only to allies but even to adversaries like Ravan, whom he grants a respectful cremation after the battle. Hanuman comforts Sita in her darkest hour. Jatayu gives up his life trying to save her. In governance, compassion is expressed through citizen centricity, fair grievance redressal, and attentiveness to the vulnerable, seeing every file not as a case number but as a life impacted. Seva, or selfless service. The Ramayana reverberates with acts of service. Hanuman leaping across the ocean for Lord Ram. Bharata ruling in Rama's name with his sandals on the throne. Even a squirrel helping build the bridge to Lanka with pebbles. These acts may vary in scale, but all spring from the same value: duty without ego. For government employees, the Seva Bhav means working not for applause or promotion, but for the satisfaction of having served the people with integrity. Nishtha, that is, loyalty and devotion. Loyalty in the Ramayana is not blind submission, it is commitment to higher ideals. Sita's steadfastness, Lakshmana's unwavering support, Hanuman's deep devotion all teach us that institutions thrive when they are rooted in sincerity. Today, this could mean standing by one's team during setbacks, defending ethical principles under pressure, and maintaining fidelity to the rule of law over transient interests. Shama, or forgiveness. Forgiveness in the Ramayana is not weakness, it is wisdom. Lord Ram offers Ravana a chance to change before the war. He forgives Kaikeyi for her role in his exile. Even after defeating his enemy, he responds with grace. In public life, officers who learn to forgive colleagues, political superiors, or even themselves create more human and healing systems. A forgiving spirit de escalates conflict and restores dignity to public discourse. Mardava, or humility. Despite being heir to a great kingdom, Lord Ram accepts exile with composure. Hanuman, though capable of extraordinary feats, never seeks reward or recognition. Humility in administration means being accessible, acknowledging when one does not know something, and allowing others to lead when they are better suited. It creates room for innovation, feedback, and genuine teamwork. Shraddha, that is, respect. Respect in the Ramayana flows in every direction. Lord Ram's deference to elders, his gratitude to sages, and even his recognition of Ravana's courage. It is not conditional upon agreement or approval. It is offered as a fundamental recognition of the other's dignity. In governance, this value translates to respectful behavior with subordinates, citizens, and across service cadres. It means building a culture where disagreement is possible without disrespect.
As we conclude Module 2, let us take a moment to reflect on the human values explored through some of India's most profound and enduring knowledge traditions. In this module, you have discovered the Vedic worldview, which upholds values such as Dhamma, that is self restraint, Dana, that is generosity, and Daya, that is compassion, and harmony between knowledge and action, personal growth, and collective welfare. You have engaged with the Bhagavad Gita, which presents a rich set of 20 core values, including Amanitvam, that is humility, then Ahimsa, that is non harmfulness, Arjavam, that is straightforwardness, and equanimity in success and failure, all of which cultivate inner strength and clarity in action. You have also reflected on the Ramayana, where values such as Satya, Nishtha, Seva, Shama, and Shraddha are woven into the character and actions of its key figures, offering timeless lessons in personal integrity and leadership. Each of these values speaks not only to personal growth, but also to the spirit of service, balance, and responsibility that lies at the heart of good governance.